Hi, everybody. So we're talking about poetry this week, and I've asked you in your discussion section to try to come up with an interpretation of Beidao's poem, The Rose of Time. To help you along with that, we're going to be looking at the first stanza of the poem in this video and trying to come up with an idea of what the words on the page say. So the first stanza of this poem says, "When the watchman falls asleep, you turn back with the storm. To grow old embracing is the rose of time." There's always a bad habit people have when they're trying to interpret poems of wanting to go big quickly, to think about big ideas and abstract theories, this sort of thing. You always want to just start with, what do the words on the page say? So in this case, the first line says, "When the watchman falls asleep." We know the word "when" refers to an instance in time, when something happens, right? So then the question is, what is a watchman? And always when you're coming across a word you're not familiar with, you can always look it up, something like that. In this case, I'll just tell you, a watchman is someone who stands guard. So in this case, the watchman who's standing guard falls asleep. When you fall asleep, it's hard to stand guard, right? So when the watchman falls asleep suggests that when the watchman lets their guard down. When that happens, that creates an opening. It creates an opportunity. So when something happens, this creates an opportunity for something to happen. What happens? You turn back with the storm. Note here that this poem is always addressed to you. You are the one doing everything in the poem. Even if you're not aware that you're doing these things, according to the poem, you are. So what are you doing here? You're turning back with the storm. You turn back with the storm. Turn back suggests that you were going one direction, and now you're going back the way you just came. So you turn back suggests you're going back the direction you just came now because the watchman has fallen asleep. And you're not alone. You're traveling with the storm now. The storm, you turn back with the storm. So the storm is going the same way you were going. So now you and the storm are traveling together, heading towards where the watchman has fallen asleep. The third line shifts the tone of the poem. To grow old embracing is. So the first two lines kind of clump together. They completed a thought. When the watchman falls asleep, you turn back with the storm. And now the third and fourth line also group together. So you have a 4-line stanza that has 2 sections of connected lines together. So now it says, to grow old embracing is. So note here the use of the base form of the verb to grow. It's using the infinitive to. And what do we think to grow old means? When you grow old, you're moving closer to your death, right? But in this case, you're growing old while embracing. So to grow old embracing, even as you are approaching your demise, you're clinging to life. You're holding on. Maybe it's to someone or to something or to life itself, but it suggests holding on in the face of your own death, your own dissolution. And what is that? It's the rose of time. So the question of what is the rose of time is kind of the mystery of this poem, right? And here we have our first clue that it's somehow related to this idea of growing old while embracing. And that's connected somehow to when the watchman falls asleep, you turn back with the storm. So maybe the watchman falling asleep gives you the opportunity to slip past the watchman in order to embrace life, to embrace someone that you care about, something like that. And that is, according to the poem, the rose of time. So those are just some thoughts about the very first stanza of this poem. Remember that any interpretation that I can come up with isn't the only interpretation. You may see these lines a little bit differently, but you always want to start with what the words on the page say. That's really crucial to how we interpret poetry. All right, thank you all, and take a look at this poem in the discussion section and see what you can come up with. Bye.